What is up, everybody, and welcome back to TarHeelIllustrated.com. I'm Jacob Turner. Joining me from Kenan Stadium, where I was about an hour or so ago, as well as our very own publisher, Andrew Jones, in the sweltering, humid, open-air portion of the Kenan Memorial Stadium press box. AJ, what do you think the temperature is there?
This is the coach's room. Well, there's no circulation. I'm a circulation guy.
Oh, you ain't the only one.
So I need circulation. It could be very warm, but if I'm getting circulation, I'm okay. But there's zero circulation. So this may get darker as we go through this. It's brutal in here.
This is a dark shirt.
It's brutal in here. This should be the penance that a team that gives up 70 points to a G5, they should just have to sit here.
Yeah, man.
Sit here and sweat. Yeah,
I mean, you mentioned your setting right now being brutal, but it was an absolutely abysmal performance from North Carolina today, losing 70-50, the most basketball score of all time you've ever seen, to James Madison. Carolina dropping to 3-1, 2-1 at home, and James Madison improving to 3-0 and 2-0 on the road. But AJ, I've been going to Carolina games for a long time, either sitting in the stands or covering games, as I've done here for the last 5 or so years. And, you know, I've sit around a lot of Carolina fans.
6 years. Yeah. Don't sell yourself short.
You're right. 6 years. You can eat, and that was easily the worst, at least defensive performance that I've ever witnessed in person. I think a lot of Carolina fans would probably agree with that. But AJ, I want to start with the defense. You can't start anywhere else. If you just watch that game for the last, by the way, about the longest game ever, about 4-hour game. It was unbelievably long.
Yeah, that 2-minute warning really came in handy in this game, didn't it? Yeah,
it was fantastic. They want to speed games up. Well, let's put a 2-minute warning in there. It makes a ton of sense. 611 yards total offense for James Madison, 53 points at the half. I almost feel like I need to repeat that. 388 yards for Barnett, their quarterback, 5 touchdowns. But AJ, I want to focus in on this right here, because I just spent about an hour talking to Carolina fans about this. And this for me is the game right here. We were texting a little bit about this as well. Carolina's up 14-11 with 4:08 left in the first quarter. By the 1:23 mark in the first quarter, it's 25-14 JMU. And then by the with 56 seconds left in the second quarter, it's 53-21 JMU, meaning Carolina was outscored 42-7 in basically 19 minutes. And you raised this point to me. They actually, JMU scored 35 of those points in only 11 minutes and 52 seconds. Now, we could sit here for 8 hours and analyze that segment alone. But the fact of the matter is, however much game film you watch on it, however many, podcasts you do about it, that right there is one of those kind of unexplainable progressions or sequences in a game where it's like seeing a UFO, man. You can't explain it. That shouldn't happen against a JMU team. It doesn't matter who you're playing. That shouldn't happen against anybody. But to get
out, shouldn't happen against anybody. Shouldn't happen against Georgia or Texas.
And that's the game. And again, Carolina never recovers from it. The second half was a human nature half, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. But that right there is something we could spend 8 hours analyzing, and we would never get to the bottom of it, because at the end of the day, it's inexcusable and it should never happen.
I'm going to give Brian Balcom a little bit of props here. Excuse me. I'm starting to speak like the team played.
Pats out.
Brian, of course, on our staff, sitting next to me. He said the onside kick, and he said at that time, he said, this could be a game changer. Mm-hmm. I don't think they ever recovered from the onside kick. Mm-hmm. I don't think they ever recovered from that. And obviously the game played out in a way that you could point that and say, yeah, that's right. He also said in his research that the basketball team gave up fewer than 70 points 18 times last year. And right at 74 times.
Oh, good Lord.
So I can go on and on. I might go on, and pardon me if I do. There are so many numbers. You need to read our Inside the Game. It's premium. I got to make it premium. We got to be able to pay the bills here. But I'll give you a few things that were in there. I'm just going to throw some stuff out, and I'll get into this performance as I go along. North Carolina has given up 60 or more points 7 times in its history. Mm-hmm. 2 of them have happened in the last 3 seasons, and they were to G5 teams. App State, and today JMU. 6 of them, by the way, have happened this century. It happened in 1912, and then didn't happen again until 2000 when Florida State did it. This was such a pathetic performance by the defense. It looked to me like they were not ready to play. It looked to me like the scheme was shown to be a bad scheme and approach from the outset, and whatever adjustments were made just made it worse. They didn't tackle well. They got clobbered at the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. Omarion was hitting the backfield all day long for the most part.
Yeah.
There was no help. You're supposed to keep an eye on the quarterback. Their quarterback had runs for 38 on the first play of the game. He had 27 and 24. No, the discipline stunk. The gap control stunk. The linebackers were MIA for the most part. Elijah Huzzy got burned. And I'll tell you what, there was the fumble at the 8-yard line. The very first play should have been a 92-yard touchdown for JMU. Huzzy fell, but the quarterback way overthrew the ball. It should have been a 92-yard touchdown. The block punt, we'll get into that in a minute with the special teams, but the block punt and interception return for touchdowns in the first half, even if you take those away, and the block punt, they got the 2-point conversion after, so that's 15 points. You're still at 38 points to a team that had never scored more than 28 and a half against a Power 5 team. Ever. And what's wild is JMU hit the 46-point mark with 7 minutes and 11 seconds left in the first half. At that moment, they had already scored more points in a half than anybody had ever done so against North Carolina.
Wow.
And we're like, guys, they could hit 50 in the first half. I have no idea how the nation has reacted to this. I'm intertwined in my work, consumed with my work. I'll find out later. They had to be the top story in the country for a while today because they were getting absolutely destroyed. And as bad as it looked to us, and we're objective, like I have a completely objective look. There's nothing emotional for me when they score a touchdown or when they give up a touchdown. But the people that judge things a little bit differently, that don't have a journalistic skin in the game, have got to be looking at this like, what the hell is going on there?
Yeah. I'm
sorry, but the defense, I had just written a goal line stand piece yesterday. I posted it like 4:30.
You gotta delete that one.
And had all these things this week about how the defense was showing improvement. I know they didn't play great competition, but they still showed improvement.
Yeah.
This was John Bunning. I said to the Daily Tar Heel kids, the DTH kids, at halftime, I was walking by him, I stopped, I said, now you guys know the experience of covering John Bunning and Larry Fedora. But it's worse. They didn't do it to G5s.
No. It's one of the worst.
Everything that could go wrong defensively did go wrong. I just think I don't think they were ready to play. They didn't 38 yards on the first play. What, running quarterback? Coming into this game, this is a JMU team that had 13 points and 285 yards against Gardner-Webb.
It's like
FCS Gardner-Webb. All right. I did something about JMU the other day where it had 702 yards of offense in its first 2 games total. 391 came on 13 plays. We talked about this in the show the other day. That means in their other 106 plays they had run, they averaged 2.9 yards a play. Today, the Dukes averaged 6.3 yards rushing if you take away the 2 sacks.
It's amazing. And you mentioned something a second ago, too, about JMU scoring, 46 points by the, 7-14 mark in the first quarter.
Almost the midpoint of the second quarter.
They came into this game having only scored 43 points in the first 2 games, 30 against Charlotte, 13 against Gardner-Webb. They had more than that with 7 minutes left in the first half. I mean, how do you analyze? I mean, how do you really sit down and analyze and defend or justify that? To me, it's unexplainable. I don't really know what I just witnessed, particularly in that first half.
It's a complete and total failure of every aspect of the program.
Yeah. 100%.
Today was an utter failure. There is no way a team with a bunch of dudes that are going to be in NFL camps, and quite a few are going to make rosters. Don't laugh, because last year's team has 6 rookies in the NFL right now. There's talent on this team. There's no excuse for that to happen. If you're going to explain it, A, not ready to play. B, where was the leadership and the pride? C, whatever adjustments were made, we couldn't tell because nothing was working. Every time you think, maybe JMU got its little shot and that's it. No, it just kept going. And I thought Madison let Carolina back in the game by taking the foot off in the third quarter.
Oh, 100%.
They started slowing down to try to eat up clock. They should have just kept going. They would have scored 80 points. They would have kept going. North Carolina was not going to stop them.
No.
And they kept throwing the starters out there. There's a lot of guys on that defense I like a lot. I think are really good players. But every one of them was terrible today. Every one of them. Mm-hmm. Every one of them was terrible. Jeff Collins was terrible. Mac Brown was terrible. Tommy Thigpen was terrible. Ted Monachino was terrible. All of them were terrible. Nobody found a way to against a team that you're much more talented than. And Mac even described them in postgame as a lesser team. That's a quote. There's no excuse for somebody on that side of the ball to not do something reverse course. I think they woke up today not ready to play.
Yeah.
They saw that they only gave up 13 points to Gardner-Webb, and that was it, man. I mean, I'm supposing here, but that's what the performance was. And
that's what it felt like.
Before you go any further, I'm going to clarify. It's our job to call a spade a spade. Mm-hmm. And at times like this, and I was just talking to Brian about this because he's working on a piece about Murphy's Law, about we can go wrong, will go wrong. And they had a lot go wrong in all three phases, including offense. Disregard the 50. I said, there are times as a journalist where you have to pull out a hatchet and you've got to whack. And the thing is, it's not personal, but there is nothing that you and I could say in this video, nothing that I can write or the NNO writes or IC writes. There's nothing any of us can write or say that is worse than what they team did on the field today. It's just not the case. So some may not like the reporting, some may not like the tone, but there's nothing worse than giving up 70 at home to a G5. A quarterback who they were thinking about benching.
No, that's the craziest part, man.
Accounted for 7 TDs today. Tying the most ever in this stadium by an opposing player. And who did he tie? Sam Hartman from Wake Forest a few years ago.
Yeah, not that long ago, man. I remember that game very well.
And that quarterback played at Grimsley.
I know. Won a state championship with Travis Shaw. State championship game MVP, by the way. I mean, good quarterback, but not – he looked like a Heisman Trophy winner today. I mean, he is the best football team I've ever seen in my life, really, in that first half. I mean, they were unbelievable, but a lot of that was Carolina just not being ready to play. I mean, that's what it was.
Madison had 12 penalties for 105 yards. Carolina had 611 yards total offense. Their quarterback threw for 475. Amarian ran for 139. If you would have told somebody those 4 things at 11 a.m. today, this is going to happen, you're like, well, hell, Carolina's going to cover times whatever. Mm-hmm. They lost by 20. Mm-hmm. And that's how horrific the defense was and other aspects of the game.
And that's a perfect segue because we'll talk about the special teams in a second. But I tweeted this out in the first. I was talking to some fans. I was in the stands today, and I was talking to some fans around me, and I tweeted this out in the. I believe it was late in the second quarter, midway through the second quarter, and I said basically what I saw today from the defense in particular, but from the team as a whole, was it reverting to what we've seen, AJ, and we've talked about it nauseam in the last 5.5, 6 years now, is the number one thing for me for the defense, especially early on through the whole game, but first half in particular, is there was little to no pass rush at all. Carolina got no pressure on the quarterback. The amount of times that he was able to just stand back there, go through his progressions for 5-6 seconds and then make a play was unbelievable. And what that led to, AJ, as a result, is Carolina giving up these massive catastrophic plays. And AJ, how many times have we talked about that the last 5 years? But to build on top of that, what we're going to talk about here, special teams, liability, and not only a liability, AJ, actively hurting the team, actively hurting it, not doing anything to benefit and actively giving JMU points. And then to wrap that all up, AJ, we see an offense that, okay, the quarterback conversation has been the whole conversation this week and this season, rightly so. Okay, they look pretty good, but they're going to have to score about 60 to win today. And no, they were going to have to score about 71 to win today, actually. So it again, this is what I think a lot of the frustration lies with fans, and this is where a lot of my criticism has always came in is, even as a journalist, I know you probably agree with this a little bit too, it is a little tiresome having the same conversations about units and about groups and about that's what it felt like. It was just reverting to that old way that we've talked about for the last 2, 3, 4, 5 years. And to happen against JMU is the biggest worry. And not only that, AJ, it happened in about a quarter. It wasn't even just a half. I mean, the game was over.
It happened in a flash.
The second quarter.
It happened in a flash.
It was over. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, the special teams, I said this last, they had 2 punts blocked last year. They had no one blocked today for a touchdown. This has happened a lot. I am not a fan of offensive linemen being in the shield, on the shield team, because it's not about blocking somebody. It's more about just getting in their way. I think it would make more sense to have quicker guys back there. I know that I'm not a coach. When I played, it was way back in the old days, and I didn't play in college, so I'm not at their level. I never will be at their level. But I've seen enough, and I've been around enough, and I've talked to enough coaches that sometimes there are things that teams do that I just don't understand. And I've never understood putting offensive linemen in the shield team. Because if someone comes from the side, they're just not quick enough to respond. If you get better athletes there, they don't have to lay out a guy. They just have to get in his way so they don't block the punt. That's all you really have to do, because everything is bang, bang. But if they don't get in his way, then they got a path to the punt. And I mean, that was pathetic. That was supposed to be fixed. We talked to Larry Porter in the experience room 5 weeks ago.
Yeah.
4 weeks ago. It was 4 weeks ago. We've gotten it all taken care of. He said it was an individual issue. There were players that made mistakes. Well, I'm not so sure. When it happens a lot, it can't just be the players on something like that. They've got to change what they do. The onside kick, you got to be ready for it. You got a G5. You've got a coach who's coached at smaller levels, but you have to know that there's a lot of creativity and cleverness with a lot of stuff he does. The dude's won at places like Assumption and Holy Cross and Johns Hopkins, for goodness sake. So he can clearly, you win at those places because you coach, not because you have more talent. They had to be aware and ready for it, and they weren't. Max said, well, bounced off the chest. It's not supposed to bounce off the chest. Special teams stunk today. They gave up a 2-point conversion. It was terrible. It was Murphy's Law.
Yeah.
And you can get away with it if the defense is playing like it did at Minnesota. But maybe Minnesota's offense stinks. We don't know. They play Iowa tonight. We'll see what they do against Iowa. They had 27 against Nevada last week. Charlotte hit the defense with big plays. That was a red flag, but they said we got it fixed. It was all about leverage. Remember you and I talked leverage?
Yeah.
Podcast?
Yeah.
Talked all about Marcus Allen explained to us to a T in layman's terms, what does leverage mean with respect to your role? We got it fixed, guys. Well, it wasn't fixed today. It was everything that went wrong. And it spilled over to special teams, and it was early. So they're giving up big, giant chunk plays early. They give up a block punt for a touchdown, which made it 11-0. Yeah,
11-0, yeah.
So what you've done, and they fumbled, and Carolina fumbled on its first possession of the 8-yard line.
Yeah, Hamilton,
So within the first 6 minutes of the game, 5 minutes of the game, Carolina's fumbled at the JMU 8. So they lost left points on the field. They let a quarterback on the first play run 38 yards. Then they get a punt blocked. They score a touchdown, and then they allow a 2-point conversion. All that in the first several minutes of the game. You couldn't ask for a bigger juice injection to a G5 than what they allowed them. And the problem is they never figured out a way to stop it. The injection was a limitless flow of juice. And they had it up until the very end. So the special teams, you got to fix that. You cannot get punts blocked as much as this program does and not do some kind of change in how you go about it.
Yeah, and I think that's the frustration, and that's where I think the criticism is extremely fair. Is in Mac again? We'll move on to the last thing too, because we're going to tie a lot of things in on this last thing. But I want to start with the quote from Mac, because I do think Mac summed up the game, and not summed up the game. I think he summed up the feeling from fans, and I think he came out and owned it exactly how I was hoping he would own it in this situation. And I'm going to read a quote from him. It can only come back to one person, and that's me. I've hired everybody that works on this staff. I've hired everybody that works in this building, and I've signed every player on this team. So the people that want to blame me, they should, because I am at fault 100%. He also had a quote during his post. You probably didn't hear this one. This is the post-game press conference with Jones Angel he does. I heard this one on the radio.
Press conference?
Yeah.
I was in the press conference. Oh, the radio.
Jones Angel
interview. Yeah.
He said let me read this one real quick. I got it pulled up. He said to Jones Angel, I've been here 6 years and you can't lose a game like this. It's my fault completely. And again, I don't the whole blame game, I don't care about whose fault it is. Of course, he's the head coach. Of course, it's his fault. But the key here is year 6, right? This is year 6. And you're not only losing to JMU. Carolina loses 28-21 today. Okay. Bad game. Offense is struggling. New quarterback. Let's see what happens. We don't need to panic quite yet. But the way in which they lost, 43-21 at halftime, 70 points to JMU in year 6, in a program that, AJ, you just spent 5 minutes talking about all these things that were supposedly fixed. This is not us making this up. This is what we've been told. One of my favorite things that you've always said in teaching me the way of doing journalism as I've come in is we don't make stuff up. We dissect games based on what we see. It's the players, it's the team, it's the performance
and what
that gives us what we talk about. That's what we talk about.
Yeah, what it is this. The way I cover a team is I judge them by what they do on the field of the court, and then what they say about what they should do in advance and how they articulate what happened afterward. So if it's realistic. Now, if I'm covering UAB and they say we want to go win the CFP, I'm not going to hold them to that.
Yeah.
But if I'm covering North Carolina and they tell us all these things are improved, and Jeff Collins has been great for this, and he was the first 3 games. Nobody knew this was going to happen. But when you're in the program and you speak for the program, you have to see these things on a regular basis. I think Mac was blindsided today. I really do. I think there were times he said, I don't know, in the press conference. He was blindsided. That means he's going to have to sit down and figure out what the hell happened. What on earth happened, and how did such a good coaching staff lay an egg today? Lay a massive egg, because the players laid an egg. That means they laid an egg. Mac has always told us that if a player makes a mistake, if it's a penalty or misses a block or misses an assignment, it's the position coach's job. It's his fault. So everybody had a lot of fault today, and Mac had fault too. And I do think it's important to find the blame internally. We can all say whatever we say. That's not going to affect anything that happens inside those rooms tomorrow, really tonight. Mac's in his office right now. He's not going to leave until 2 or 3 in the morning, probably.
Yeah.
And he's probably chugging antacids.
Yeah, and I think.
But he also has to do some reflecting and some soul searching.
Yeah. Of course. You
said it's year 6. This can't happen.
Yeah.
If this happened to a program in the SEC or the Big Ten or another ACC program, Virginia went to Coastal Carolina today. Last I saw, they were blowing them out.
Yeah, they were beating them good.
I thought they were going to lose. I'm like, why do you go do that? Why do you play that game? Well, they didn't let a loss last week affect them. They came out and they played. I don't. Maybe they lost. Who the hell knows? They gave up a big lead. My point is that in year 6, you cannot give up 70 points at home. I know James Madison is a nice program, but guys, 4 years ago, they were FCS.
First year head coach. Rebuild. They lost a lot of guys.
It took a ton of players to Indiana start like 7 JMU guys. And Indiana's pretty good.
It's a rebuild year for them in a lot of ways.
Total rebuild. Total rebuild.
And I think that's where a lot of the concern and frustration amongst AJ, how much we talked ad nauseum this offseason about the lack of excitement around the football career. Not even excitement, lack of belief. Excitement to me correlates with belief. You know what I mean?
Look in the stadium at kickoff the last 3 weeks.
And then you go out there and do something like that in year 6 where belief is already low. And it's just, and again, I think Matt can watch that film as much as he wants, man. And you can look at all the X's and O's and all the blown assignments and all the blown coverages. But at some point against JMU, somebody's got to step up and make a play. Somebody's got to step up as a leader and say, hey, guys, this ain't working. This is not going to slide today. This is AJ. This is an experienced defense. I mean, we're not talking about a bunch of freshmen running around out there, really. You know what I mean?
They didn't give us players. We didn't give us any players to talk to.
Didn't get to talk to anybody.
I disagree with that. I understand it. I understand where they're coming from, and I'm not being critical of them for that. But it'd be nice to see what some of the so-called leaders have to say. I'll tell you, Jeff Schottmer is one of my favorite players I ever covered. And I was there in Greenville in 2014, the 70-41 game. Carolina gave 39 first downs that day. None of the players would come out and talk to us. Kevin Best was still the SID at the time. And Kevin comes out and says, no one will talk. And then Schottmer volunteered, so I'll speak up for the team. And he stood there and took questions for 15 minutes like a man. I'm like, man, that is a dude right there.
Mm-hmm.
He took questions for the team. I think in a case like this, I'm not faulting no player for doing that because it probably didn't cross their head. No one wanted to come out and talk. But it would have been good to talk to somebody just to see some players come out and take accountability. Next time we talk, they'll be Tuesday, and they'll be talking victory bell by then. So I agree with you. I think that the people that have been on MAC, I've never fully agreed with that because you have to have perspective of what this program's been since he left. The only time it was worth the crap, the guy cheated his butt off.
That's a fact.
They got him in trouble.
It's
okay, so you got to understand. You got to have perspective. But man, for the people who are anti-MAC, he gave them this on a silver platter today.
Oh, I know.
And I say he because he took full responsibility. Said it's on him. So we're going by his words, right?
Mm-hmm.
So for the people who have said, look, you've achieved a lot of things under MAC, just nothing gigantic yet. And I've said there's sort of a bricklaying process. Foundation's been built. Take the next step this year. This is going to hang over them for the rest of the season. You know, the App State game when they gave up 61, you know why it didn't hang over them? It did for a couple of weeks because they won games. They were 9-1. And that was so far in the rearview mirror, people forgot it even happened. This is going to hang over them because now you're looking at a situation where you thought, well, the defense is going to have to carry this club. The defense was a disgrace today.
Worst I've ever seen.
And it didn't show fortitude.
Mm-hmm.
And fortitude is not something that you just turn on and off like a switch. That was concerning.
No. And I think what I think a worry is, too, is we talked a lot. We just go look at the last couple of years, for instance. Carolina loses to Georgia Tech a couple of years ago, a game they shouldn't have lost and never recovered from it. Last year, Virginia at home, game they never should have lost. In hindsight, never recovered from it. I think the worry is, and again, I spent about 10 minutes ago, I spent 5 minutes talking about all these things that we're seeing repeated. Defensive line, no pressure, massive catastrophic plays, no matter who the defensive coordinator is, over-reliance on the offense to score 100 points to win a game, special teams actively helping the other team win. The worry is if these themes are going to continue, which we have no reason to believe they're not, there has to be a legitimate worry of, okay, this is as worse as it's ever been. This is the worst performance we've seen in the Mac Brown 2.0 era. How do they recover from it? That's the question.
I think it's the most discouraging performance from a Carolina football team since I've been covering Carolina football in some capacity. And that's 1996.
It's the worst game I've ever watched.
Discouraging. Maybe I should change that because the first game I covered was the loss to Virginia in 96 when they had the 17-3 lead. That was the most discouraging. Certainly the loss to Florida State the next year here, 20-3, was very discouraging. But it was 20-3, and it felt like a blowout. That's how close the program was. Right now, in year 6, when a lot of things appeared to be headed in the right direction, slowly, this is the NASCAR state, but ain't nothing going fast right now, right? It's going kind of slow. This kind of derails a lot of that. And Mac Brown isn't a guy who's living off one championship like a lot of morons say on Twitter. It's not true. Go look at what he did at Texas. Look at the 18 years at Texas before he got there, and look at Texas after he left until last year. That's all you need to know. Look at what he did in this program, and look at how it could not ever reach that point since he left. So that's a moronic look at it. It's an unfair, inaccurate, lazy look at it. However, in year 6, when you've got a G5 here with all the newness that it has, to get so humiliated on your own field, I think it's something that's going to be hard to overcome.
Yeah.
I think it's fair to say that in MAC Part 2, these next 72 hours are the most important 72 hours of Part 2. He has to figure out a way to get value out of what just happened. Value in the sense that you learn and it doesn't happen again. Knock on wood. Knock on whatever this damn thing's made.
Knock on metal or plastic, whatever it is. Yeah.
Lenova, who's now sponsoring the Hurricanes and NC State Arena. They should money. Come on, Lenova. This is Lenova right here. He needs to He needs to be a hard ass. He needs to hug them. He needs to be honest. They need to dissect like there's no tomorrow. And they need to lay it all out there tomorrow, because I don't think sometimes basketball coaches will just throw the game for, we're not going to show it to them. That was a mess. You can't do that, because so much of this was reminiscent of Virginia and Georgia Tech last year, of Georgia Tech 2 years ago, and the way they finished that season. The way they went, they go to state and you give up the big plays, you get blown out, whatever it is. The no-show at home against State a few years ago, that kind of thing. Somebody did tweet, and I thought it was apropos in many respects. Well, at least they didn't wait till November to collapse this year.
Jesus. Yeah, that's.
I don't want to come across too hard, but there's nothing that I say that will be worse than giving up 70 points and 611 yards or whatever it was. A quarterback that was on the verge of being benched, counted for 7 touchdowns. Let me give you this one. Here's a stat. I just remembered this one. This stat is, I tweeted it out and called it gory. I think I called it. No, gory was. This is a gory stat. Central didn't go for it on 4th down last week. Charlotte went for it twice, at least the last 2 times it went for it. Charlotte converted a 4th and 5 and got 37 yards. Then later in the game had a 4th and 5 and scored on a 28-yard touchdown. Today, JMU had a 4th and 1 and got 24 yards. So in the last 3 4th down situations, combined 4th and 11, the opponents have done whatever the math is, 37 and 28. What is that? That's 65 or 75? And then you add 24, it's 99. 99 yards on 3 plays on 4th and 11.
Jesus.
That, to me, isn't just a couple of bad plays, because it happened again. Things could be a one-off, and we said we'll see if it's a one-off or not to Charlotte, but that stuff came back. They shut down an FCS team. Big deal. Now that's big deal. Doesn't mean anything.
So many things you could analyze from this game, man.
Yeah, somebody joked in the press box, they call money, 3rd down, money down. They didn't name 4th down. Yeah. 4th down is when you rise up. It's when you're a dude. Yeah. You rise up on 4th down, you make the play, you get off the field. 4th and 11, 99 yards.
I want to end it. Let me end it on this real quick, because I've been arguing with people on Twitter about this for the last hour, which I shouldn't be doing, but I can't help it, man.
Get off that.
I can't help it.
I know this much. Our Facebook, I'm hooked up to our Facebook because I had posted stuff. So it's lighting up on my monitor, on my screen. People going and responding. And there's 3 people who are regularly negative and want to come after us a lot with the stuff that we say. Like, their names are popping up.
They're full force.
And you know what? Go ahead. Have a field day. I'm going to go back and read them all and I'll reply.
Yeah.
Have a field day.
Absolutely. And this is what I'll end it on, because as expected, the overall consensus from today is clean house, fire Matt, get rid of everybody. And this is my opinion on it. Free country, as a fan, entitled to have whatever opinion you want to have. I'm never gonna. That is a complete. And when you look at it and you analyze it, I can understand where you're coming from, and in a lot of ways, it's a valid opinion. I'm not gonna blame you for that opinion, but I'm focusing on the defense as a whole right here, because all my confusion and the defense is the one that's hard for me to wrap my head around, AJ, because there's almost this consensus in the fan base again from a lot of people of, all right, clean house, fire everybody, restart, let's do it again. Matt can't take this team forward, blah, 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 blah. Again, entitled to that opinion if you want to have that opinion. But where there's a disconnect with me is, I do not foresee, and I'm not basing this on an opinion, AJ. I'm basing this on the last 30 years of Carolina football. The history. Go look at the history. Go look at the coaches that have been here. I don't see a world in which clean house, new coaching staff comes in, new shiny toy comes in. And
we should address that later this week when we have a lot of time.
Yeah. Because I miraculously turns this program around.
Yeah, I
and the defense as a whole, because the defense has been the group that in the last 30 years, they've had a pretty damn good defense in 97 and a pretty good defense
96 and 97, they had the best defense in college football. Then Matt
in 08, but what we all know what happened after 08. Can you really count that?
Yeah,
that's where a lot of my confusion lies.
Those wins are vacated for a reason.
It's just, how do you not have how can you not build a pretty good product?
I think this is, I think we're coming up with some drop and conversation topics, and maybe you and I can do a couple drops together.
I had to address it because I'm getting all over the place today on Twitter.
No, it's okay. It's okay, because I think part of what we have to do in our job is we have to sort things out too.
Yeah.
We just can't hop on and bang stuff out and we're good to go. We go on and go to dinner with the family. That's not the way it goes. And you have to process things like this and figure out a way to articulate what you saw and what you believe, and in a way where it doesn't come across as personal. It's not intended as personal.
No.
But that doesn't mean it might not come across as personal. Right? It could. So that's why we have to be very careful. These are some things I think we should discuss this week in drops. Maybe you could do a couple of them with me so we can have these discussions, because I think it's fair to address what you just brought up. I also think it's fair to address the other part, like who you're going to get. And then I do think it's fair that maybe I can divulge some stuff that I know about the struggles of being a head football coach at North Carolina, things that are out of his control, some of the obstacles that he has to go up against at this university. And there are some. And maybe it's time that some fans understand that. So they'll understand. So it ties into this whole conversation. So we'll do that this week. I don't know if you have time to do any drops with me. I think they'd be good conversations. I can handle them by myself, but I do think we should definitely hit on this and have this as part of the conversation. And the crazy thing is, it's one game. I do think there's a chance this game lingers for a while, but it is one game. But guess what? They got the Victor Bell. They got Duke next week. All their conference goals are still in place. I still think there are a lot of winnable games on the schedule for this team if they can overcome today. Because I agree with you. When this kind of crap's happened in recent years, they never recovered from it.
Yeah.
So that's why I said these next 72 hours are the most important 72 hours of MAC Part 2.
I couldn't agree more with that. Again, yeah, we'll talk about some of these topics later on this week, because I do think it's fascinating. I do think it's not as simple as a lot of people make it. Just go look at the history of the program. I mean, just do it.
There's a lot. Look, I know a lot, and I can't reveal everything, but I think I can tie some points together to help people understand a little bit. And Absolutely. It is, I'll leave it at that right now. We'll have a deeper conversation about it, and I'll get a chance to kind of figure out the way I want to present it as well.
Yeah, fascinating times. And again, no matter how you look at it, nothing excuses the loss today, 70-50, 53-21 at halftime. It's just inexcusable for a Carolina program in year 6 in the Mac Brown 2.0 era. It should never happen. And that's not me making that up, Edge. It's the exact same thing Mac Brown just said 45 minutes ago. So
it forced us to have the longest 3 things ever. And I'm sitting here in this sauna.
It's hot in here, so I'm still sweating. I'm still sweating. Not really, actually. Not really.
By the time I get to the 3 things, my hair changes because I'm going like that a lot, and it goes in all these crazy ass directions. My wife's like, "What's wrong with your hair?"
I'm still sticky from the game too, to be honest with you, man. It wasn't the most pleasant game to see. It could have been worse, but it wasn't.
I got my column. We got this to post. I got my column to write. Then I'm going to go home. I'm going to watch some college football tonight.
Heck yeah, man. We'll go home.
Then I'll go in my office before going to bed, and I'll start processing some things. And I got a couple of the pieces to write, but we're going to do that. We're going to address a lot of these things this week.
Yeah,
and I think Monday with Mac is going to be interesting. Just some of these things. It'll be very interesting what he says and the direction we go with the press conference.
Yeah.
And I will leave it at this. Kudos to Mac for manning up, saying what he said today.
Yeah.
He was embarrassed. I felt bad for him because this guy's accomplished so much. And I don't think when he woke up today, he had any inclination he was going to say the things he said in the post-game press conference. So I feel bad for anybody that has to go through that. I don't care who you are.
Yeah.
But it's now his job to show that all the necessary fibers are there to get this thing fixed quickly and get them back on the right track.
Yeah, man. That's why he gets paid the big bucks. Can they get back on track?
Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
Hall of Famer for a reason. He's done this before. Now he's got to do it at this point in time when it hasn't always happened in this program recently, when they've derailed. They don't do a very good job of picking up the pieces.
No. That's the next step.
Choice.
That's the next step, man. Can they? And that'll be what we're analyzing and judging throughout the season. Yeah. And again, doesn't get any easier, man. It only gets harder from here. So it's going to be a fascinating season. It's going to be fascinating to see how this team bounces back in Durham next Saturday, 4 p.m. kickoff against the Blue Devils.
I'm going to throw something out because it's our longest 3 things. It's 40 minutes. If you've watched all of this 3 things,
might have a few.
Send me a DM, and I want you to tell me what color shirt I'm wearing. And don't say darker black than it was earlier when we started, because I do think it's dark. It looks to me, I'm looking at it, it looks like it's kind of wet. That's pretty gross.
I did.
My wife will mandate a shower. She'll have like a trail leading to the shower when I get home. So,
like I said, man, I'm still sticky.
Send us a DM, or send us an email. I think it's THI1983. Isn't that what it is? At Yahoo. Let us know, and we'll randomly pick one person, maybe a second person. We're going to give you a 1-year subscription to Tar Heel Illustrated.
Heck of a deal right there, guys.
Stick around. As angry as many of you must be, we appreciate you sticking around and listening to this thing all the way through.
Yeah, man. Tough one. Tough day for the Tar Heels, and I told a lot of fans it's one of those days diehards will never forget for not a good reason. You won't forget a game like that. 70-50 loss. Don't want to, but you won't. 70-50 loss to James Madison. I've been Jacob Turner. He's been Andrew Jones. The longest 3 things. Well, we've probably had a longer. We've been doing this for 6 years. Probably had a longer one at some point.
This has got to be the longest.
One of the longest. Probably the longest football.
It's the sweatiest. It's the sweatiest.
Longest football one we've done by a country mile, I bet. But again, I could sit here another hour trying to dissect this one. I still wouldn't have any idea what happened on that field behind you. But again, I've been Jacob Turner. He's been Andrew Jones. Make sure you keep it locked to TarHeelIllustrated.com for all your post-game coverage from today's loss, and obviously, going into Duke week next week as well. Appreciate you guys watching. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, and the notification bell too. See y'all next time. Thanks.